Hi friends, welcome back to my channel Only Bio, presenting up the revision of the chapter Excretion and Osmoregulation in details. Friends, this is the sixth part of this chapter and I hope that you've been checking with the playlist and following the series. This chapter being a very long one, it has been divided into many parts and sections so please keep a watch on the playlist and keep watching. Let us today talk about the coverings of the kidney. So friends, on each slide you're going to see a picture which will be depicting something related to what I'm talking about. So please zoom in and do watch up the picture because those are definitely explanatory. The kidneys are covered by three external layers which include A, that is the outermost layer called as the renal fascia. B, that is the middle layer called as the perirenal fat capsule. Friends, it is also at times called as the adipose layer, yeah, adipose capsule. And C, that is the innermost layer, that is the renal capsule. So you have to remember there are three coverings, renal fascia being the outermost, the middle one being the perirenal fat capsule, that is the adipose capsule, and C, that is the innermost layer, that is the renal capsule. Now friends, the renal capsule is going to be in close contact with the kidney. Let us talk about each one. The renal fascia. It is a thin layer of fibrous, that is collagenous connective tissue, which encapsulates the kidneys as well as adrenal glands. Friends, this is a very important point. Now, the point number one here is it's a fibrous tissue, connective tissue, and it is covering up not only the kidneys but it also covers up the adrenal glands. Can be asked to you as an MCQ, so it's worth noting. It anchors the kidney to the abdominal wall as well as the surrounding tissue. Again, an important function done by the renal fascia. The renal fascia, which is also known as the Gerota's fascia, is a collagenous connective tissue sheath which separates the perirenal fat from the pararenal fat. Friends, this is a very important point and it's nowhere there in the books. Gerota's fascia, that's the other name of renal fascia. And the other thing which is being mentioned here is it is separating up the perirenal fat from the pararenal fat. Perirenal fat is nothing but the adipose capsule, okay? The perirenal fat is present between the renal fascia and the renal capsule, whereas the pararenal fat is present superior to the renal fascia. Now, the middle layer is the perirenal fat, also called as the adipose capsule. It is a mass of fatty tissue. It protects the kidneys by shock absorption. So these are the functions done by the middle layer. Now friends, on the screen you can see again a beautiful picture depicting up the fibrous tissue that is Gerota's fascia as well as the adrenal capsule as well as the renal capsule. So the innermost layer is the renal capsule. It is a smooth, transparent, fibrous membrane. It is continuous with the outer layer of the ureters. Can be asked to you as an MCQ, so worth noting point again. It acts as a barrier against the spread of infections in the kidney. So the microbes can't directly attack the kidneys just because the renal capsule is going to cover up the kidneys as well as the ureters. So it acts as a barrier. Barrier is here nothing but the obstruction. Friends, again you can see a very beautiful picture showing up the coverings of the kidney along with the LS of the kidney. So please zoom in and see it properly. LS of the kidney, that is longitudinal section of the kidney, shows two distinct regions within the capsule. Histologically, it is divisible into two regions, that is renal cortex and renal medulla. So outer area is always going to be called as the renal cortex here, and the inner area is the renal medulla. Renal cortex is outer, that is peripheral, red colored and granular region. Now friends, it's important, red colored. It is basically deep red in color but obvious because of the presence of the blood vessels in it. Now why is it granular? Like when we draw, we often draw it as a granular thing. The reason behind it is each granule there actually depicts the presence of the Bowman's capsule or the Malpighian body of the nephron. Okay, you might have studied the structure of the nephrons in the lower classes. Of course, we are going to do it in details now. But if you try to recollect something, so you'll remember the cup-shaped part of the nephron, which is the Malpighian body, or at times you just call it as a Bowman's capsule. This is present in the outer area, and this is why the outer area, that is the renal cortex, looks granular. Renal cortex contains the Malpighian bodies, the convoluted tubules. Convoluted is nothing but the coiled tubules and the blood vessels. The renal cortex produces erythropoietin. Again, a very important point. Friends, erythropoietin is a hormone that helps in the production of erythrocytes, that is RBCs. In other words, the renal cortex is the outer region of the kidney between the renal capsule and the renal medulla that consists of a space that contains the blood vessels that connect to the nephrons. The blood vessels obviously are expected to be connected to the nephrons because unless the nephrons are supplied with blood, how would they filter out the blood, right? Because their job is the filtration process, which is ultimately going to separate out the nitrogenous waste that are present inside the blood. The cortex provides a space for arterioles and venules from the renal artery and vein, as well as the glomerular capillaries to perfuse the nephrons of the kidney. Medulla is the inner region of the kidney with pale red color and striated appearance. Now, why medulla is pale red? Because, but obviously, it does not contain the glomerulus. I'm not saying that the blood vessels are absent here, but comparatively, they are lesser. That's the reason the color becomes pale red. Now, why is striated? Now, striated is nothing but striped appearance. Striped. Okay, now why they look striped is because the major part of the nephron, that is the tubule part, is located in the medulla region, and hence the medulla looks striated. Medulla mainly consists of loops of Henle and the collecting ducts. The renal medulla contains the majority of the length of the nephrons, the main functional component of the kidney that filters the fluid from the blood. Friends, on the right hand side, if you observe, zoom in please, you can see a nephron also being drawn for you to understand why the cortex is granular and why the medulla is striated. Please zoom in so that you can ideally understand. Now all these are arranged in conical manner to form the renal pyramids, which are also called as the medullary pyramids. Renal medulla can thus be described as the innermost region of the kidney, arranged into pyramid-like structures that consist of the bulk of the nephron structure. Cortex extends in medulla as columns of Bertini or renal columns between the pyramids. Friends, if you observe the diagram, you will get to know that the column of Bertini is nothing but that part of the renal cortex which enters the medulla and separates the pyramids from each other. Narrow tip of the pyramid is called as the renal papilla. There are several pyramids as you can see. The renal papilla opens into minor calyx. That's nothing but a very small space. Minor calyces merge together to form major calyces, and the major calyces unite together to form the renal pelvis. Renal pelvis, which is also at times called as the renal sinus. is the funnel-shaped area in the region of the medulla of the kidney. Do watch the diagram, the picture, so that you understand what exactly is the renal pelvis. Renal pelvis continues as ureter, which leaves the kidney through the hilus. The renal pelvis connects the kidney with the circulatory and the nervous systems from the rest of the body. The renal pelvis contains the hilum, and the hilum is the concave part of the bean shape where blood vessels and nerves enter and exit the kidney. So it is also the point of exit for the ureters, the urine bearing tubes that exit the kidney and empty into the urinary bladder. Okay. Each kidney has nearly 1 million complex tubular structures called as the nephrons, which are the functional units. Nephrons, which are masses of tiny tubules, are largely located in the medulla and receive the fluid from the blood vessels in the renal cortex. Nephron can thus be defined as the basic structural and functional unit of the kidney that filters the blood in order to regulate the chemical concentrations and produce urine. Friends, the detailed structure of the nephron we shall be doing in the next one. Hope you have liked this. Please subscribe if you are new to the channel and hit the bell icon if you are not yet done it. Thank you so much for being with me.